Did
This
the recording
conference will
come out
now
well
be
the other?
recorded.
Did the recording come out well the other night?
The recording came out. What we have is audio. We don't have visual. I worked with GoToMeeting. We'll have visual this time, but we have clear audio from last time. So it's
Great.
no more
Thank
than we normally have for our meetings. So it's all good.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone want to call the meeting to order?
I'll make a motion to call the meeting to order. Do I have a second?
Second. Trustee
All in
Galusha.
favor?
Yep, please announce who it is when you make your motions and seconds and when you speak for the, when we go to do the transcription. Trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
Trustee Galusha,
Trustee Galusha, aye.
Trustee Lampier,
Trustee Lampier, aye.
Mayor Corby,
Corby, aye.
Trustee Stetser.
Stetser, aye.
Motion passes.
You're going in a different order. You're trying to throw us off, keep us on our toes.
Well, what I'm doing is going in order on screen so I don't lose you. Because you guys jump around. It's
We
like
do.
the Brady Bunch on steroids.
We're wily.
Okay. So, Mary, the floor is yours.
Okay.
Okay, Mary, I have just a couple little housekeeping things before I get started into the budget from concerns that came up the other night. One of them, the attorney bills. We still have a McConnell bill that's been outstanding since October for $585. I don't know what the issue is, but I'm just making note that we really need to figure out what that is and we need to pay it. I've been asked by Attorney Turner if there isn't any issue going on with his bills because he would like to see some sort of payment come through. I received more bills from him today. And then the Zoglin bills are as they are, and we still need the adjustment for the 350 versus the 260 on that. So if whoever is working on this, we need to get a resolve here fairly soon because I'm going into year end here shortly and would like to have these items taken care of for our accounting purposes.
Okay.
Any comments?
Trustee Galusha, Trustee Keating, why is that McConville bill still outstanding since October?
Oh no, do you have a number on that one, Mary?
Yep, it's 111127.
1127?
111127, $585 from October 22nd.
Huh. 111127. I don't see that as one that I've sent. I don't see it in my inbox at all, in my email at all. 111126.
I know I've sent it.
Yeah, it should
I know
come
I've
up.
sent it out. I have sent it a few times. I will resend it, but I would really like to have it paid out if I could next meeting.
Let me see.
If there's any issue with that, let's try to get that one resolved because that's old. Osborne, of course, Jeff had called me on them and asked if there were any issues with his. Most of these are, they're all trustee board related, so I would think you should be able to speak to that, at least most of them.
Is there any reason
No
we're waiting
comment?
to, Trustee Stetser, is there any reason we are waiting to approve the ones for Jeff?
That's the question I've had out there. When I receive the bills, I forward it to everybody. Dan is reviewing all the bills for appropriateness. That one in particular, I'm asking about because that is directly related to the trustee board. And like I said, Jeff had asked me the other night, why his bills weren't being paid out this time around, and I could not answer him that other than to say they're on the list and we hope to pay them out soon.
Yeah, that's the big one that was like 21 or 23 that had a lot
Yeah,
of.
that's for 20,087.50. That's a quarterly municipal bill.
Okay.
Okay. The other one, the next one was for 1501, that's PCP versus VOP. And 683750 was HPV matters. And the last one for 8250 was general labor. Has the board had a chance to review these? You know, if there's no issue as far as anybody knows?
Not that we were made aware. This is trustee Lanfair.
Have you
So-
reviewed them, Dan?
Some yes, some no. I'm sending some on to Mary right now.
Okay, which ones are you sending forward?
You'll get them during the meeting and I'll point them out to you.
Okay, because I would like to, are you, can we get an approval for payment for any of them for tonight?
I believe so, yes, if you just give me a couple of minutes.
All right, that part's fine. Moving on to the Zoglin Group, I have one from August 1st for 2042. That one, I believe, is PZBA one for $1,600, and then there was an additional charge there for $442 to do with conversations between Mindy and Jeff. And I don't know what the holdup on that is. I do know part of it is the 260 versus the 350, but beyond that, I don't know if there's any other issues. We have also $385 for just PCP apps. I think that was the one that you brought forward the other night, but there is a question about the hourly rate, again, 260 versus 350. The March PZBA for 1,600 is standard meeting. The April PZBA is standard meeting for each for 1,600, and then another PCP apps for $70. So if the charges, I don't have them in front of me, but if the charges are okay as far as 260 versus 350, then some of these should probably be moved forward for payment.
This is trustee Lanfair. Mary, the other night when we discussed this, I thought the board had agreed to make the payment for the standard work for the PZBA, which was the standard rate, $1,600.
There
And
was one invoice that the board did approve for that purpose. It was for $1,600. That one there was one that I had paid out, but we still have two more for regular work for the PZBA that has not been approved.
My opinion is that those should be paid and that the ones in question be researched by trustee Keating and let us know what the status is of the discrepancy in the hourly rate and why that applied, and then we could move forward once we have the justification for it. If there is an explanation, it could have been a mistake, I don't know. But the standard $1,600, I think is per month that she charges for the PCBA regular business, I think those should be paid. That is my opinion.
I agree with what you're saying.
I would agree.
I agree. This is Stepzer.
All right, then I'm gonna put this aside until we can look at all of those bills together, and if we, maybe at the end of tonight's meeting after the budget, we just say yes or no to the ones that Dan is sending to me, and we could either do a payment tonight, or I can put it aside and put them in for payment on the 28th. Whichever the board decides, I'll let you think about it. I just wanted to bring that up because Jeff was a little concerned. And I have more bills sitting here that I haven't had, they had come in today that I haven't had a chance to forward to you. All right, the other question, the other statement I wanted to say was someone had called in the other evening talking about the equipment, and there was some confusion with the chips. So what I would like to say on that is we have an allocation from the state currently sitting at $68,000 monies that we have to either use or could quite possibly lose in this transition of things. The state did pass their budget. The new figure for chips has not come out, so I do not know what our allocation is for this fiscal year. It should be at least another 22,000, I'm guessing, but I don't have that right now, so I cannot confirm that. But I did want to state that our Village Grove project and our equipment, the Kubota and the T450, were going to be fully funded by the CHIPS monies, which is the state aid. So it had no impact on our sales tax or property tax monies that were coming in. So that's just a statement for clarity. Does everybody here on the board understand that?
Yes, thank you, Mary.
Yes.
This is trustee Lampier. Yes.
Okay. I'll move on. The last item I have is Justin Valistra had sent out an email earlier today regarding attorney fees. I am going to just say that the numbers that I had provided in the budget regarding the attorney fees are numbers that I received from the attorneys themselves. And if there is a need for a modification for any of those numbers, that is something that the trustees need to speak with each attorney about. So that takes care of that. And a thank you to Justin for doing the research for the other villages and towns around in Monroe County. The information is helpful. And with that, I think I will turn over the budget presentation portion to Frank. He had some items that he would like to talk about.
Mary, thank you. You'll have to excuse me a minute. I'm trying to get my papers ready here. There's been some question about the 9.9% tax increase and why we should be doing it. And I want to comment on that. First, I want to begin by stating that these numbers that I'm going to go over are based on assumptions that are made that may or may not come to fruition. The board will have to make adjustments as time goes on. For example, we can approve a budget, but we really don't have a final sales tax figure. So we're going to have to work with that when that comes by. So what this is these are numbers that are current, that we have, that will probably change, that we're going to have to work with going forward. Having said that, I looked at the budget that we approved at the last meeting. We approved it, and we approved it to go to the public hearing. And that budget included the 9.9% tax increase. As of 5/31/2020, the overall budget projections, if they are accurate, or if they will turn out being accurate, and we end the year with a fund balance of $47,232. That will be our fund balance as of 5/31/2020. If our proposed budget holds true, there's another assumption, we will end the year with the same fund balance. And that fund balance will be in violation of our own fund balance policy and the recommendations of the state controller. If we do not have the 9.9% tax increase, our revenue will be reduced by $73,787. Therefore, our fund balance will be $47,232 minus the $73,000, or a negative fund balance of $26,555. We'll have no money. And that will be, as I said, against our fund balance policy and the recommendation of the state controller. With this reality in mind, I reviewed our approved budget to see if there could be cuts or adjustments made. And I made two major adjustments. or cuts. Legal fees, I cut by $79,750, and I'll explain how I did that. And reserves, working from memory, hopefully, at the last part of the budget, Mary plugged in $5,000 for 6 reserve accounts. That accounts for $30,000. I took those reserves out. We don't have the money to be putting into a reserve account. We took the reserves out of our equipment schedule. So between those two, the budget was cut by $109,750. Miscellaneous cuts, and I went through every line item, totaled $13,750. So the total cuts or adjustments that I made came to $123,500. If you add that to our year-end 2021 fund balance of $47,000, it comes to $171,732. Fund balance as of 5/31/2021. Our fund balance policy calls for a minimum of 10% of our appropriations, which comes to $167,053. So with these cuts, we will be within our fund balance policy. We will be acceptable to the controller. That is based on all the assumptions coming true, with the understanding that we're going to have a tough year and we're going to have to look at every expense going forward. So what we're going to have to do, I anticipate, is, Mary, well, let me talk about the legal fees.
Yeah.
How I got to that cut. What I did was I went through each law firm and cut the projected number in the budget by a certain amount, and it came to $79,250. What I did was I assumed that we, meaning Dan or myself and Bob Corby, meet with each of the law firms and ask them to agree on a specific monthly payment for our fiscal year. And that monthly, and what is left at year end, what we owe them at year end, will go into long-term debt. And we would have an agreement that we would have to pay them off over a certain period of time. And that we'd have to do with each of the law firms. So that is the major item, and we are going to have to meet with the law firms soon, because they may not agree with it. But
Frank, I have a question.
yes,
The 79,000 that you saved, how was that allocated between the 3 firms?
I have that.
So this isn't a cut so much as a deferment.
Yes, Dan.
Yeah.
You're right.
Frank, one of the things I was looking at in these legal fees was also possibly deferring code work. That's $10,000 that we could save. I realize we'd probably have to do a little work, but things have slowed down given the stay-at-home order. So, there may not be as many things come up. Now, this is something that would hurt the planning board. So it's not something that
Right.
I want to make the decision myself.
I think that's a good point, Renee.
All right.
What's that, Bob? Can you repeat what you just said? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said, I think there's less urgency right now. I know some of the large projects that we anticipated are on the back burner right now. And I think that's a good cut to make. I think the urgency is much less, and I agree with you.
All right. Do you each have a copy of the budget?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Could you go to page 2?
I'm there.
That's the page that lists the legal fees. Everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start out with the first item, contractually, Osborne Municipal. We have them budgeted for 90,000. I cut that by 30,000.
So what does that work out to, Frank? I know before it was about 10 hours a week and, probably 4 hours a month it's just Jeff sitting in our meetings, I would guess. So what does that work out to? If you've cut that to 30, how many hours per week can we rely on Jeff?
I didn't.
I'll do it with my calculator. Hold on.
No, I didn't make that calculation.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Okay. The next item, contractual Osborne HPB, we have them at 28,000. I cut that by 6,000. The next one I left at 19,200. The next one, contractually, Zoglin PCP, they were at 18,750. I cut them by $3,750. So they're listed as 15,000. The next one is contractual Zoglin LWRP. We've got them budgeted for 50,000. I cut that by 25,000.
Yeah, that seemed a little high to me too. And maybe, that I realize there are a lot of things up in the air with that one, depending on what comes out of the court system.
Right. The next one, contractual.
Lily?
Hodgson.
Nope. I think Lily had a thought.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes,
Lily?
Lily?
This is trustee Lanfear. Frank, when you are using the word cut, I'm guessing then that this debt, this is a debt that we would be incurring to the end of the year. It's not.
It's the wrong
actually
word.
moving. No,
Right,
it's not
right.
that.
It's
Defer.
It's the wrong word.
Oh,
It's an-
sorry, deferred.
Yeah, it's an adjustment. What I cut was what we have budgeted for them, but that's an obligation that we are going to still have to pay, but we're going to defer payment, as you said, Dan, over a period of time, so it's not a current debt. Okay?
Yes, but
It's kicking the can down the road, which is not ideal, but it's a reality of where we are. It's creative thinking. Thank you, Frank.
Well, this
Okay.
will also make us really go through these with a fine tooth comb, more so than maybe we have in the past as well.
Well, this is trustee Lanfear. What I am attempting to point out is that the attorneys have given us their best estimate. If it happens to be more than what they have adjusted for, told us, then we're even in a bigger hole next year and looking
Well,
at,
I think
20%.
one of the things that's happened since the last court decision, and we got these estimates really before the appellate court handed down the last decision,
Okay,
is that there's another cycle of cases that's going to occur because Justice Ark still has another decision to make. That decision may or may not be appealed in the appellate court. And so it pushes the LWRP case further down the road. What I don't know is the actual schedule. And so I think that's something when we talk to Hodgson Russ after their conference on Friday, we may want to get an update after that, what they think the actual time schedule will be, because it could have significant implications in terms of our fiscal year.
Yeah, Bob, I second that. That's a good idea to talk to them after tomorrow. I'm glad we don't have to vote on this today. We'll know a lot more tomorrow as to how this thing's going to unfold. The other thing I want to point out, this has always made me nervous, guys. The Hodgson line on 140.20.41 at 40K for the year has always made me nervous when the last full year that we have was 162. Yes, I recognize that it could be significantly less, but a quarter of the size of our last full year seems very hopeful. I think one piece of information that we really need from these guys right now, they haven't sent us a bill in a long time. We need a current bill from those guys just to know what they've spent in this fiscal year, which will get us closer to being able to make a good estimate on this coming year. Because right now, as you can see, the total expenditures from them is 17K, and that's way less than what they have done. They just haven't sent us a bill. And Mary, I don't know, it's been more than 6 months, I have to think. It's certainly been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah, so that's I'll shoot them an email today and just ask them could they please send us over their most current bill, and then we can maybe make a little better estimate on this line, coupled with Friday's information from that session with Judge Dark.
So,
Okay.
Because this might need to come up is my worry. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Trustee Stetzer again. I just did the breakdown. That's about 3.7 hours a week for Jeff's work with us. That seems very low with the new number. So I don't know if that's realistic or not. I mean, he estimated way more than that. Mindy gave us the 50,000 for estimate for the LWRP, or the Zoglin Group, I'm sorry, I need to call her Mindy, for the LWRP work. And if we end up cutting that and then we need it, I mean, I just want to talk through, Lily's concern as well. Like, if we're cutting this based on the estimates that the attorneys gave us, are we just deferring, kicking the can down the road?
Well, in a way we are, but we have a bigger problem. The bigger problem is if we don't do something at the end of fiscal year 2021, we're going to be, for want of a better term, bankrupt.
Yeah, out of compliance too.
And that gives the state controller, I don't know for sure, but that gives them the ability to come in and run the show. They can come in and take over. We don't want that. So we have to do something now to prevent that. And the only thing that I saw was if we could cut their estimates, their meaning the attorneys, we could cut their estimates and agree on a fixed payment amount monthly. So they are being paid something. And then at the end of the year, if we're over, and we probably will be over, then we'd have to sit down and negotiate how long it's going to take us to pay off the balance. But as I said, my concern was the fact that we would end the year with a negative fund balance and basically no cash to run the operation.
Yeah, I understand.
Can I also add to this list as a placeholder of something that we want to come back to at a true cost savings, which is not filling the extra position in the office staff. I know we've talked about that before, but we really haven't talked about that since the COVID stuff, and that is a pretty significant cash expenditure. So we don't have to talk about it now. I just wanted to flag it as really an area of possible actual cost savings, not on deferments.
No, and we haven't really decided on that. As I remember the staffing committee is still looking at job descriptions to see what it is we can do with that position. Your other two, the one where we were going to eliminate the full-time treasurer, we really can't do that because
Yeah, we've
section.
already covered that one. That was just an
Okay.
idea. Yeah, no, it's more the not filling the office staff one that really seems like the outlier.
Well, that's a position that we could leave open to allow us to use that cash to get through the year. And then if things look better, then you could always fill it. But I think you're right. You're wise, Dan. We might as well flag that as something that it's a possibility.
Yeah, agreed, Bob. The challenge there, I don't want to leave it open because then we've budgeted for it. And then if we're going to use the money somewhere else, let's put it in a reserve fund. I don't like to see us put something in a budget that we don't intend to do as a way to cover for a different line item. So either what I'm suggesting is either we cut the position or we don't backfill the position and we take it out of the budget, or we don't fill that position, we don't backfill that position, and we move that money over to a reserve fund. I want to see us accurately reporting where we're going to use the money from a good budgeting standpoint.
Well, I'm sorry. Moving that money into a reserve fund puts limitations on the usage of it. So, well, we don't want to tie our hands moving it over to a reserve fund.
If anything, you'd want to move it into a contingency.
Yeah,
That's what I
yes.
meant. Contingency, absolutely. Yeah. I'd like to see it come out of the budget altogether, but if it's going to stay in, I'd rather have it in a contingency than in a role that we don't intend to fill. So.
Can I just interject one little thing in here?
You may.
This is
The
Mary
position
speaking.
that you, oh, Mary speaking, sorry. The position for the deputy clerk, Dan, you have on your sheet here is a total savings of $44,928. That is not a true figure for the general fund because our wages are split between the general fund and the sewer fund. So it would be realized by only 75% into the general fund.
Thank you for the
Just say-
clarification, Mary.
All right. Can I continue on with these legal bills?
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, thanks.
There's only one more category where I did make an adjustment. Well, the line item contractual Hodgson litigation, I cut that by 10,000. And the last one, contractual Osborne Code, I cut that by 5,000. So if you add up all the, and I won't call them cuts, if you add up all of the adjustments, it comes to $79,750. And so then if you go to page 10, you will see that we have an amount of 5,000 budgeted for 6 reserve accounts. And I'm saying we can't really put that money into those reserves now. So I cut all those out, and that was an additional 30,000. The other cuts are throughout the budget where I cut 500 here and 1,000 here, but that totaled up to about $13,000. So with that, our fund balance would be acceptable. And again, that's assuming that everything goes the way we're assuming they will go. And And we are going to have some real problems coming up with the sales tax item. But these are the numbers that we know. This is what we know. And I feel that we should work with what we know now, and we handle the problems as they come up, recognizing them now and recognizing that we will have to make some drastic steps.
Hey, Frank, thank you. This is really creative thinking. Can I ask for a little bit of history from this team? Has there ever been a case, and I put this in the chat just to remind myself, has there ever been a case where our expected revenues came in much less than we thought they would? And how did we adjust? I'm thinking most specifically of, there must have been some sales tax dents in 2008, 2009 around the Great Recession, but I don't know. So what I'm looking for is, how have we dealt with significant budget
in the past,
shortfalls?
I can answer that, Dan. In the past, we've always carried a significant general reserve. And so there were grant projects where the cost overruns happened, and that put us over. Also, when the economy tanked, and each time we dipped into the general reserve because the funds were there. And the difference today, obviously, is we don't have those funds in the general reserve at this point.
Okay. Does anybody remember how much our sales tax came in short around that time? Was it dramatic, or was it just a little bit less?
You remember, Mary?
I'm thinking it wasn't super significant, maybe like 30,000 or so.
Okay.
It wasn't a big number. Right now, we're looking at a possible drop in sales tax of approximately 115,000. At the minimum, I'm having that number basically confirmed, the 20% number confirmed by NICOM, the comptroller's office, and our own accountants that are saying, look for at least a 20% drop. It might be more. Doesn't show me muted.
No, I heard all that.
Did
Yeah.
somebody not hear me?
No, I heard you.
I heard all that. Yeah.
You cut out.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it
I
does.
did.
Thank you.
So Frank, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
Dorothea's
Trustee
muted.
Galucci, can I go back to the legal fees? And can we get the authorization, Dan, Bob, and myself, to meet with these law firms and make the proposal
Yeah.
that I talked about to them?
Bob, I'm sorry, Frank, do we expect them to ask for interest? And if so, what can we,
I don't know if they would ask for interest, but if they did, I, just off the top of my head, we've been looking at a rate of, Mary, what are our savings account paying? 1 or 2%?
Yeah, that's max, and that's dropped. Actually, the last time when I renewed CDs, we were, prior to that renewal, we were at 137, and the last time was 0.25. So we have already dramatically dropped with the interest rate. I don't know what it will, it's going to fluctuate.
This is
Just
trustee
off the-
Lampier.
Yes.
You recognize, Frank, I would just like to remind you that only 2 of you would be able to meet with the attorney, because 3 would be a quorum.
Yes.
So
Correct.
you have to think 2.
there is a comment on, I don't know if we, Mary, or not Mary, I'm sorry, Dorothea, there is a comment from David Marshall. I don't know if we want to take that into.
I think
Yep,
that,
real quick, can I make a suggestion to the board? Instead of deferring the legal fees, you could take a loan from your own sewer account and pay yourself interest back. So actually, you wouldn't be paying someone else interest or late fees or whatever on those bills. You have the capability of doing that. So if you came to the end of the year and you needed to borrow money from sewer, you could use that as almost a bank. At least then you're paying your own taxpayers or sewer people interest on that money you needed. And you can make a payment plan to do that. That is allowed.
I think
I don't
Just
love
trustee Lynn.
deferring. I don't love borrowing from the sewer fund. I appreciate a creative idea, but I don't. First of all, I don't love deferring. Second of all, I don't love borrowing. But we can discuss it, obviously.
Trustee Lanfear, trustee Stetser, you mentioned that somebody wanted to call in. We didn't establish at the beginning of the meeting, and perhaps we should have,
That's
that I
right.
would like to suggest that we wait until the end of our workshop and take the calls at that time rather than.
Okay, great, great.
Okay, if we establish that, we all agree upon
Yes,
that, is
that's
that
great.
okay? Okay.
Well,
Thank
yes
you.
and no. I mean,
Thank
David Marshall put this into the chat, and it's really relevant to what we're talking about now. So, this is about an interesting take on deferred payments.
Well,
So
I will defer to Bob then to make the decision regarding how he wants to conduct the meeting.
Okay. So we would, so what you're proposing,
We can
Frank,
hear
is
you,
that this is trustee Stetser. What you're proposing is that you would first go take this to the attorneys because we are reducing significantly the estimates that they gave us of the work they expect to do this next year. Now, granted, when they gave us those estimates, the world was still operating, or at least around here, we were still operating fairly normally. So they may already have some adjusted thoughts based on the shutdown, but you all would go talk to them and then bring it back to us before we would vote on a budget, correct?
It would have to come to the full board for approval.
Okay.
I think because it's relevant and because of David's knowledge, let's see what David Marshall has to say.
Okay, do you
He's
want me
on
to
the-
read it, or I've got it up?
Yeah, if you
Okay, sure. This is from David Marshall. Crap, I don't remember where he lives. Do I need to put that in the, he's on
That's
South
on
Main
Main
Street
Street.
somewhere. Okay,
I have a record for Mr. Marshall.
okay, good. Deferral of legal costs to another year is a unique approach to lowering the expenses, but I am uncomfortable having deferred legal liabilities with multiple firms without a contract signed as to the nature of future indebtedness, and their ability to call the loan creates significant future risks. Essentially, the law firm would be loaning us money without an absolute understanding as to when they might demand payment. And he is at 67 South Main Street. Thank you, David.
And yeah, David, of course, that would be what we would talk to the attorneys about. It's a really good point, David, and we would get in writing what the terms would be, when we would pay the deferred payments back, if there's any interest, what it would be. Obviously, we wouldn't talk to them about interest. We would let them mention that they would want interest, and whether they could call that back in. But you're right, it becomes a liability on our balance sheet, which isn't great, but it's better than nothing. So.
Yes, trustee Galusha, there was an assumption made on my part that anything we did with the attorneys would be that we would need to enter into a solid agreement that would be legally viable. But I understand what you're saying, David, and I assume that. I just didn't say it. Anybody else?
Was there, this is trustee Stetser again. I had the $10,000 for the code work flagged. You cut that by 5,000. Do we want to discuss deferring the code entirely, the code work, or do we need to leave a little bit in reserves to handle the most pressing things that might come up? We would have to definitely communicate the expectation to the planning board, which is different than what we said we would do this year, that we will be deferring significant code work.
I think they would understand. I've talked to Justin over the last couple days, and I think even Justin understands that things may be deferred.
Okay, and also while we're on that page where the code work is, let me flip back to that. Right above it, if everyone's on page 2, I had a quick question that's related. Line item A1410.43, it says code updates and $5,000. Dorothea, is that related to the work we were going to do on the code, or was that for printing of the books I don't
No,
remember.
that actually is, anytime you do a local law update, it has to go to general code, so we end up paying. So what I tend to do to save money is wait till you have like a half year's worth of updates, and I send them in to be codified, so that we pay less than if we send it to be updated as the local laws pass. So
So if we were deferring the code work, like we're proposing, then that would be $5,000 that we wouldn't need to have in there either, because we wouldn't be
I'd
pushing
almost
any
say,
code work.
I think that's pretty normal amount we budget. That in I think the code work obviously pushed that number up in previous year, but I think this is the standard budget line. Isn't that the same
That
number
is
we've had in the
correct.
past?
That is correct. So Mary, that is correct.
So even if we're not anticipating any code
I
work, we
think
want to
though,
leave
I
that
think
in?
I'd still be comfortable maybe cutting it because in the past year, so much of what we did was band-aiding the old code, whereas we have a brand new code, and I think we can probably get by with it for a year with probably doing nothing.
That's fine, and we could probably even hold code updates. If you do pass local laws, we can hold them from being codified for like a year.
And then do what we said we're going to do and have the review with the planning board and make whatever changes.
That's fine.
How does everybody else feel about that?
Really good.
So then
Yep, that'd be fine.
we're getting rid of both, or we're cutting line item A1420.43, which is the Osborne code entirely, and then also A1410.43 code updates, which is 5,000. So that's 15,000 right there.
What are we doing with that last one, Renee?
We were saying we're going to defer code work entirely, as I understand it. So, right, you had it cut to 5,000. If we cut the 10,000 entirely, that doesn't leave us any wiggle room for any emergency things that might come up. I don't know, what. None of us can really anticipate what might come up if an application comes through and the planning board runs into something, but I don't know how much we would need to rely on Jeff for that correction if we're deferring code work entirely, which is what I just heard this board say they were comfortable with given the circumstances. Did I answer your question, Frank, or did I just dance around it? We were saying
No,
cutting that entirely, which leaves us no money to work on the code.
So what you're saying is to cut line item 1420-43, cut it completely, or by 5,000 like I did? I
No,
can't
cut
hear
it
you, Renee.
entirely.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Oh, darn it. Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
We were talking about cutting it entirely and also cutting the code update further up on that page of 5,000, since we wouldn't be submitting any code.
Okay.
So that wouldn't leave us any wiggle room for any small corrections that we would need to do. But there are other ways to get that done. If we need to, if there's something really glaring that the planning board needs us to fix that they found in the code. So I don't know how comfortable everyone is zeroing that 10,000 out.
Okay. We can zero it out.
There's
I'm
also
comfortable
a
with it.
comment from Dave Ferris about the legal fee deferral. I don't know if someone wants, I can either read that or if someone else wants to, or if we want to wait until later.
Well, first, you have that, Mary? Mary, do you have those two changes?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
good.
So Frank, does that change anything, given that now you're originally looking at 5,000 in that code line? Is there anywhere else we could adjust now that we've cut 10,000 there that you would want to pad in one of the other legal areas?
No, I can't think of anything.
And that's a cut versus a deferment. So Frank's ideas were deferment. So
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
trying to find things we could just cut entirely until times were better. And that's where I landed on those two code
Yeah.
items.
Yeah.
And we definitely want to
Versus-
revisit after tomorrow's session.
Yes.
I have a
Our-
question for Frank. This is trustee Lanfear. Frank, when you looked at the legal fees, did you happen to look at, and this would have to be totally with PBZA agreement and cooperation and consideration. And that is, several years ago, we only had one village attorney that represented all three boards. Would there be a cost savings to the village to revisit that and to have Jeff Turner as the attorney of record for all three boards?
A virtual meeting, let me just
With the
check.
exception of the litigation, I understand, with the exception of ongoing litigation, which that is, I'm just wondering, would that be recognized a cost savings at all?
No, I didn't look at that because based on what Bob Corby told me, each board has the right to select their own attorney. And so we can't tell them what attorney they should use. Is that
No,
right,
I
Bob?
understand that. I understand that. But my suggestion was, as I prefaced, with the cooperation and understanding with the PZBA board, given the unusual circumstances that we're facing over the next year or two, hopefully just 2 years, that they would consider working with the board if it could recognize a cost savings to the village by utilizing one attorney rather than two. It was just a question, a suggestion, and of course it would be discussed with the PBZA. That was just a question. Would it be a cost savings to the village?
I haven't thought about it that much. I don't think I could tell you.
Okay.
You have any thoughts, Bob?
I just, knowing the makeup of the most active members there, I just can't imagine that I don't think they have confidence in Jeff Turner. And I think there's too much history there, and I just can't see that being viable. We can always ask, doesn't hurt to ask, but I just don't see it happening.
If it were to save, that this is trustee Lanfear again, if it were to save the village $10,000 a year, $20,000 a year, do you think it's worth exploring? I mean, I'm not talking about for $1,500. That's not the point. I just
No,
wondered. It could be significant. I don't know.
Yeah,
I-
we don't know. Yeah.
Well, we actually have Justin in the chat, and if you'd like to hear from him, I don't know if you're interested.
Yeah, actually, since we have Justin here, let's ask him.
Guys, I don't even know if there would be a cost savings in doing that. I don't
That's my
see any
question. Somebody would have to
I don't
look at
see
it.
any economy of scale of using one
how
across. I
much-
mean, these are all across different. They have to do the same amount of work on the boards, and plus there would be some ramp up time. So I don't know. I like the creative thinking, Lily, but I'm not seeing a huge cost savings there. Maybe I'm just missing it.
Yeah, I would have to research it. I know that there were some duplication of effort at several points, but it really would have to be documented, and that would take some time. I would like to point out that we have probably 12 people who are in line who would like to speak. So I don't know in what order would be the correct way to do this. I know you mentioned Justin Valistra and also David
Dave
Marshall.
Ferris.
David Ferris.
Yeah,
So-
they're in the chat. If you guys look to the right on your screen, you can see them. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose track of those comments. And
Well, I
sometimes
think the mayor should decide when and how the chats will take place. So we'll wait on Bob to make that decision.
Yeah, I think in general, let's wait till we conclude our discussion for today, and then depending on what time it is, we can open it up for additional comments.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So Dorothea, are you or Dan, because you can unmute and mute people, you're keeping track of those on the right side? Okay, then
Yes,
I'll be
I am
quiet about,
watching.
I'll be quiet when people chime in then.
I am
Thank you.
watching.
Frank, have you concluded your portion of the program? Are you still waiting? Do you still have other things that you would like to point out to the board?
No, I think I've completed my recommendations to the board. And so now it'll be up to us to meet with the various law firms, and hopefully we could get a good solid agreement with them. So I'm finished. I'm done.
Thank you,
Frank,
Frank.
remind me the number of years that you would want to defer. What was that number again? 2 years, 3 years?
I think we'd have to look at the amount. If we're talking about 60 or 70,000, we want to spread that out over a few years. If we're talking about 12,000, we might want to spread it out over a year. So
Yeah.
that depends on the amount, I would think, Dan.
Fair enough. Thank you. Can we go back and revisit the open position in the office staff and make a decision there? The way I saw it, we had three decisions or three options. One was to keep it as is, as a open position that we're going to fill in the office staff. Two was to not include that in the budget. And three was to move some of those funds or all of those funds over to a contingency line item. And yes, Mary, I recognize that some of that comes from the general fund and some of it comes from elsewhere.
Okay, I was just
Really
going to
quick.
figure out your number.
Real quick, Mary, can I clarify something? In the budget we sent to public hearing, didn't we already reduce that position for the office clerk down to 20 hours?
That is correct.
So the amount of savings then would be 18,720, and that's split. So it would be 14,000 we are looking at now.
Approximately, yes.
Mhm.
Let me just see here. The office, yes, the general fund allocation at this point in the budget that was approved for the deputy clerk position on the general fund is $14,000.
Correct. We changed that to an office clerk to just a standard laborer. I'm willing to do whatever is necessary for the board to make a good budget, so I'll leave it in your hands.
Mary,
I
does
noticed
that
that,
include benefits as well? Or is that just the salary? side
No,
of
that
things?
wouldn't have had benefits because it was part-time.
Okay.
We pushed that savings. I think we started to anticipate the sales tax loss, and we pushed some of that savings towards reducing the sales tax at that time, that last meeting, if I'm correct.
That is correct.
I think one of the other things that we could do is I could meet with the two board chairs and also talk to the attorneys. I know previously when we've had economic downturns, the number of applications generally tanks. I think that's probably going to be even more severe this time. Dustin has suggested that, they only meet every other month. I remember in the past, there have been years where they didn't meet the planning board didn't meet for 2 or 3 months, or sometimes even 4 months because there weren't any applications. So that might significantly defray some of the monthly legal expenses for the other boards.
Does Mindy's contract account for that?
that.
Mindy has a fixed bid flat rate. Does it account for whether there are meetings or not?
That's something I was just wondering the same thing, Dan.
No, does not.
Go ahead, Dorothea.
I just really want to comment on that. Mindy's contract is coming up for renewal. So if that's something you're looking to do, this would be the opportunity to do that. So I don't think you're stuck in that because her appointment is up. The organizational meeting is coming and you haven't renewed the contract as of yet.
Well, that's a no-brainer right there to save some money.
So
Yes.
I also, what will that do to those regular everyday, residents who are trying to do work on their houses? I don't know.
It doesn't stop that. It doesn't prevent it. What they're
It's
just
just
saying.
every other month. They have to wait longer. That's all.
Oh,
They're meeting
I think they could make an exception and meet. They would just say, we have an
Okay.
application and we will meet. It's not
Okay.
written in stone. It's just, they're just recognizing that they probably won't be because of the situation, that there may be
Okay.
fewer. That doesn't
Okay.
mean that they can't. It just means that we're anticipating that there will be fewer.
Okay, thank you, Lily.
Mhm. Robert, do you have anything to add to our discussion about the budget and what we heard from residents on Tuesday evening? Anything that we want to accommodate into the tentative budget?
I don't think so. I don't think
Okay.
so.
Okay, we've had an explanation about the Kubota, which was one of the subjects that came up. The other subject that came up was 75 Monroe. We might have even more information next week. We're hoping that we do. I think the other one, I'm trying to think if there was another concern that was expressed by a resident. I think those were the
It was the
ones.
legal
Does anyone
fees
else
that
remember anything else?
the attorney
Yeah,
fees.
Trustee Galusha, there was one concern raised by a resident, why we would be buying a new snowplow. And our building inspector answered that a little bit, but I'd like to add a little more to it. One of the major functions that our DPW does is to keep the sidewalks clear. In the village, as everyone knows, we have a lot of sidewalks and we have children walking to schools, Jefferson Road School, St. Louis School. And we have people walking to the rec center. So it's important that we keep the sidewalks clear, and to be able to do that more efficiently and to not rip up lawns as can be done would be a very good move. And we've got a snowplow that uses tires. We'd be getting one that runs on a track, which would improve on the turning radius in that. And so this was a good decision to improve our services to our residents. And the board looked at it, and we talked to our DPW superintendent, and he was highly in favor of that move. Our snowplow is a few years old now, so it would be time to make that move now rather than have it breaking down during a snowstorm and not having clear sidewalks. That's all I have to say.
I have a question
Yeah.
for everybody else. How long do you think we're going to go on today? Because I just got a warning from my tablet here that it's the battery is low, and I'm going to have to get a power cord if we continue.
Okay, would you like to take some of the questions from the?
Well, hold on. I want to address what Frank said there. Frank, the other side of that is, and I hear everything you're saying. This is Trustee Keenan. I hear everything you're saying, but the other side of that is this current snow year with the performance of the DPW, as always, was excellent, and the standard that they've set is very high. And to have this same service this coming year wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I recognize that the new would be better, but given the challenges that are happening in the world, this might not be the right time to do it. Nor do I think you can count on this thing breaking down and us not being able to plow the roads. Nobody has any idea whether it's going to break down or not. So in a time of austerity, I do think this is the kind of thing that we should maybe postpone a year.
But do you
Trustee
think
Keating, may I
also
make
understand it's not coming out of taxpayers' dollars, that
Thank
CHIPS
you.
money is paying for that bill, so it's not impacting the taxpayers at all?
It is not. Thank you.
Yep.
And
I
we're
just wanted
also,
to make sure I understood
we're
that.
anticipating that those CHIPS funds are going to get lower or less and less, right? So in the future, if we try to buy it, it may not be as easy. And it's
Correct, or we might not have
Good
those
point.
CHIPS funds available.
right.
So-
That's what I meant.
Right,
We're
they may be
anticipating those
lost,
are going to
so-
dwindle. Yeah. So
I'd
it almost
rather-
feels.
Yes, it's a use it or lose it situation
Yeah.
this year. So
Yeah.
And I'd rather
I
use it
worked-
that it's a benefit for the village than lose it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
worked through that one as well.
Fair enough. So withdrawn.
Yeah, just if we took it out, it wouldn't change any of our budget numbers.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Where's,
You
all right.
taking callers there, Dorothea?
Yes, I can take a look and see who, let's see here. Dave Ferris, he posed a question. Dave, just let me know if you actually want to speak. I do see that Justin Bleaster did want to speak, so I will unmute him and let him go.
Hold on, I'll be right
Justin,
back.
you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I did make a possible suggestion of cutting the number of planning board meetings. Obviously, I haven't talked to any other planning board members, but in the last 6 months, I believe we've had 3 applications. So things have already scaled way back. We haven't had a meeting. We're going 4 months without a meeting already. So that's just a possibility. Like I said, I haven't talked to other members. And chiming in on some of your code things, I would like to talk to trustees about that, because I think there are some things that are, I haven't fully figured things out yet, but they could be causing us excruciating problems. We need to there may be ways around them without changing code, but I would caution against making no plans at all to do things. Now, possibly you could make plans to make some minor changes with minimal input from your attorney, because most likely things will just need a tweak. You can talk to people in the State Department. You can talk to free resources. I know there's a couple other planning board members online. I don't know if you want to give them any options to speak.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're muted, Dorothea.
See, I mute myself so I don't interrupt here. Hold on. Dave just wants me to read his chats. Okay. Dave Ferris, he says, I don't agree with the deferral of legal fees. It is not a savings, distorts budget comparison annually, and kicks the can down the road. The key is to have a reasonable budget that is not too limited, but then manage the engagement of the legal fee services. He follows that up. A too low legal budget can also encourage litigation if a party feels the village cannot afford to defend itself. Okay.
Mhm.
Did you want to comment to that, or you want me to continue with the next one?
No, thanks for your input, Dave.
Okay, David Marshall, he has another chat line in here. I can read that, or if Mr. Marshall would like to speak, he can chime in here real quick and let me know.
Either way. Either way.
I'm not seeing a comment, so I'll go ahead and read his comment. Shouldn't the budget reflect inaccurate legal cost projections, then instead add a loan line item at the same time? Should it be from a law firm, the sewer fund, or a public issue bond? Potential future debt should be a separate line item in the budget for income from indebtedness, rather than lowering an expense item for one expense legal, be lower. Keep legal cost as is and add a bond issue if obtained. I will comment, we cannot obtain a bond for legal costs. That is not allowed.
Yep.
And I don't have any other comments. If there's anyone else who'd like to share something, please let me know right now.
I would suggest that we schedule a meeting for Tuesday.
Okay.
Agreed. Remind me of the deadline again. It's the 28th, right?
28.
Or is it the 30th? 28th?
You,
Okay. So yeah, next Tuesday would be great.
okay, so that's the 21st. Would you like to meet at the same time, 4:30 or a later hour? Please let me know.
That
can
day
do it.
works for me.
I can do 4:30. I have a couple things, if I could bring them up before. I can't tell. It seems like we're heading toward the path of adjournment. And I have a couple things I wanted to bring up.
Go ahead.
I know I brought it up in one of our meetings before we shut down, but I still would like to not have an increase, even though it's a very low cost of living increase and it amounts to $1,000. But I would like to not do the increase for the board. And I know, again, it's only $1,000, but I feel like it's symbolic, and $1,000 is $1,000. That could be 3 stop signs. I know lots of places where I could put those. Let me go through here.
Okay, can we just pause?
Sure,
Recognize
sure,
so we can
go
get
ahead.
the board to give some
Go ahead.
feedback on it? How does everybody else feel?
I think freezing our salaries is appropriate.
I don't know where Bob went.
I'm right
Oh,
here.
there you go. Oh, there you are. Up there. Okay.
I'm in Mary's spot.
Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Mayor, who works, 45 hours a week and makes 2 cents an hour? Would you like to speak to that?
At this point, I don't care. It's 1,000, whatever the increase is nothing. So it doesn't,
It's so minimal. It's very minimal, and I realize that it's symbolic, but I have to be honest with you, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it, the
Okay.
cut, particularly given the amount of work that all the trustees put in this year and every year, but in particular this year. And I think sometimes you're worth what you're paid. So I think that everyone here has worked tirelessly, and they deserve their 0.2 cents an hour that they have worked for. Frank, do you have an opinion?
Lily, I agree with you. If we spend many, many hours working for the village, and no one has ever brought up the fact that we do spend the hours. We do it because we care for the village and we care for the village residents. And I think what we're being paid is minuscule compared to the hours that we spend and the work that we do.
Optically, I think it's horrible that we're giving ourselves a raise during this time. I know it's cents on the dollar, but it just does not look good. So, Bob, so you were in favor of freezing the salaries where they were, if I heard you correctly, or did you want to change that?
No, I honestly, at this point, I think given the severity of the situation, I agree with you on this one, Dan. I think the optics aren't good. I'm okay with freezing the salaries for a year.
So 3 of us feel that
Okay.
way. And
Then we will defer to you. Yep. That's
Thank
fine.
you. I mean, I know how hard you all work. I know. So thank you for the discussion.
Real quick, I have a question from Mary since she's off camera. She asked, should she incorporate all the changes Frank and Dan suggested into the next budget that you guys receive?
Yeah,
You get a visual
as a draft, sure.
as a draft, yes? Okay.
I had a question about this is Stetzer again. I had a question about something that Zach brought up, that we may not be spending as much on tree planting because the tree planting that would be going on right now.
The trees that would be planted this spring, he's not planting because the nurseries aren't opening. He can't get the stock.
Right. So is that just something that that the team would then defer to a different time and still would happen during the same budget season? Or like page 8, when I'm looking at the tree purchase, and then on page 9, we have total shade trees. That's $17,000. I didn't know if we might, given the delay, if actually we might save some money there as well. And I love street trees. Don't get me started on that. I just wondered if there might be an adjustment to that, given that they're not going to be planting this spring.
Well, we haven't done them for a couple of years. We did minimal trees last year. So I would say leave the money in there, and then if we need to take it, we take it.
Okay.
A total of seven.
Yeah, there's 17,000 then. I don't know what, it says total shade trees and then tree purchase. There are two different items and I didn't know what the difference was between those two.
I think some
Can
of
I
it.
chime in here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. On page 8, the first, at the very bottom, 8560.1, that's personnel services working on it. That hasn't been distributed to the category just yet. It is in the budget. 8560.4, tree purchase, that is for the replacement of any trees taken out.
Okay.
And
That's replacement then.
8560.42, the 13,000, that's for maintenance of trees. You know, brocola coming out, Bristol's or whomever to take trees down or trim them back, whichever. So
Okay.
we are looking at some big, heavy trees that need to be brought down, and that's an estimate that
Okay,
Zach
so it
had
sounds
given
like
me.
we can't, those trees need to be taken down. I knew that part, so thank you for breaking that out. I just didn't know if we'd save any. It sounds like we need to keep that in there.
Yeah, it's the total. The
Yeah, I got you.
17,000 is the total of the 14 and the 4, the 13 and the 4 on the page prior.
I gotcha. All right, and it sounds like from what the mayor said, we need to leave that in there. I had on page 10, I had the transferred to capital funds flagged just like Frank did. And I did want to ask, like, so again, we're deferring the ability to do the improvements for another year or whenever. I mean, we're building up the funds to be able to do those repairs on each of those areas. And we're saying, given the circumstances, we're gonna not put money in those coffers for this year.
Page 10 is based on the transfer to capital funds is basically seed money for future projects. It's not, you know, other than, it's just a savings account basically.
Right.
Of this bunch, the first one is one that is actually existing, and it is, if you remember from prior discussions, it is the one that we have for 163,000 that we need to fix the wording on. The other ones, 9950.91 through 95, are currently non-existent. We should have them on the books for any project or something that might come up as an emergency. So like the issue that we have out front, if we have it identified into seed money, then we can go ahead and use that money without having an impact on our budget. This is just adding to the coffers, but these have not been established at this point, other than the first one. So that's what I was trying to do, was try to establish some funds into that prior to my leaving. So at least it would be on the books. A wiser move would have been to just take the money and put it into fund balance, which we are at a very critical low at. So I am agreeing with that part of it.
Okay, and then, so that's sort of related then, going back to page 3, sorry to make you flip around, on the buildings, A1620.4, the Village Hall improvements, was that for the work out front? We've got $6,000 there.
No, that was for any kind of thing. This is Mary again. It is for anything that might have happened within the Village Hall, like if we have the sewer problem that we've had here just recently, the you know, toilet's not working right, you know, something happens in the boardroom like we had years prior where the roof was leaking into the boardroom. So we have some sort of monies set aside to take care of any emergency little project that might happen. And the same thing would refer to I think it's 1620.43, which is the highway garage. I think I had like $5,000 there for any kind of emergency stuff that might happen there, which is never enough money. But like if they have a garage door that breaks down, at least we have money set aside to put that. Not all of this is sitting in a contingency fund, which is the unidentified kind of thing.
I remember the discussion about when we established these, and they were reasonable numbers back then. And I just wanted to revisit them. Given the climate now. So thank you.
Right.
That's
You're welcome.
those are the things I had flagged in addition to the legal costs that we already talked about. And I definitely have some concerns about whether our estimates are going to be too low for the legal fees, but I will wait until you all bring back what you find from our attorneys.
It is a very tricky year. I just have one other question for the board as I'm going forward to make the changes. Go back to the sales tax number. Does the board want me to make a modification for 20% down or leave it at the number that we have and you can adjust it as you go, hoping and praying that we'll have the money coming in?
How credible is that 20% number?
The comptroller told me that. The NICOM staff had said the same thing, and our own accounting firm had said, look for a 20% decrease, it may be more. So that doing it's $115,000 less revenue that we would now have to find more adjustments into the aside from the adjustments that Frank had come up with, we would have to find further adjustments to reflect that particular lack of revenue.
I think for the next, my vote is for the next draft, let's look at it with that reduction already taken out, and then we'll keep going and plan accordingly. But what do others think?
Well,
Mary, this is, I'm sorry, Lily, go ahead.
it's let's call it $120,000, and we would be negative. So I don't know how we would be dealing with that. So you're
Right,
saying
it's a big
how
number,
would the
so
board deal with a negative budget? That's what the question is.
it's
Do I
a big
misunderstand?
question. You'd have to
Well-
further reduce those, you would have to further reduce the expenses, or you would have to increase your taxes, which is the only sure income out of all of the monies on the revenue side. Everything else is a wild card. You know, the applications are dependent on people coming forward to do things. It's not a huge number. Permits are the same thing, all contingent upon applications. If the board does not, if the village does not have applications come in, the money is not realized. So therefore, then you know, we're looking at a negative balance, and it's kind of dangerous territory. So I think maybe I will, with the board's permission, I'll run it and we'll see what it looks like, and then make a decision of where to go from there. That said, I really have just next week to try to get some sort of balanced budget together. And I hate to put the pressure on the board, but I'm kind of up against the wall. We have to have a budget to New York State for May 1.
So maybe we need 2 meetings, Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah, seems like a good thought. At least get the Thursday one planned, and if we need to cancel it, we cancel it.
Right.
Let's get it scheduled.
At what time did you want this meeting? What works for everybody?
That week, that would be Thursday the 23rd. I'd have to go a little later. I can't do 4:30 on the 23rd. I can on the 21st, but not the 23rd.
6 o'clock?
It's 6 o'clock.
Well,
That works.
I'm throwing that up. What time are you available, Dan?
I'm available. 6 would work on Thursday the 23rd.
Can we're sticking with 4:30 on the 21st.
Yes.
Is that right?
If that works for everyone.
Yeah, that'd be good. That's my birthday, so not that I want to be
happy
like
birthday. Well, you
celebrating
don't
with
need
all
to
of you,
be
but
here.
Oh.
We
no, I'm
need you.
definitely coming. I'm definitely coming. I didn't want you guys to
Awesome.
think I was a slacker if I
All right,
want to keep
we'll
it
drop
for
off a
earlier.
cake.
No, I don't need cake, believe me. It's not
Okay,
that
we'll have
exciting,
your
but,
cake.
but we're sticking with 4:30 on Tuesday, right? And then 6
Yes.
on the 23rd. Okay,
Yes.
Okay. All right.
All right.
sweet.
All right, well, let's, trustee Galusha here. Mary, right now, the cut in sales taxes will be this August, is that correct?
That is correct. My gut is telling me that the one coming out, our payment coming out in May might be a little bit lower than what we anticipated, but it will probably be closer to what we have budgeted. But the one in August, I feel, is going to really tank. And same thing with the one in November. I feel that one is going to really tank. if we're lucky, with Christmas shoppers and whatever, maybe the following year, 2021, for February and May payments, hopefully on a recovery, maybe they will swing up. But at this point, I'm thinking half a year, we're tanking, half a year, we might be going back up. But it's going to be significant, and I've had that on 3 reliable sources. So I think it would be prudent to take that into consideration. If in fact, prediction does not come true and we end up having higher numbers, it would be awesome, and that money would end up could be going into fund balance at the end of the year.
Yeah. Like if there's a government bailout to make up for a loss in sales taxes, for example, which we can't count on yet, but it could happen.
It could happen.
That's right. That's right. Dan, there is a lot of talk, Frank Galusha here. There is a lot of talk about the government coming to the aid of towns, cities, municipalities. And perhaps that's going to help us out with that cut in sales tax in August and in November. Mary, that $120,000, is that a combined number for August and November, or is that one period?
That is for the full year.
So
we're looking at
talking
$120,000 loss in our revenue line in the sales tax collections.
And what you're saying is that the next time we meet, you're going to have some recommendations as how we can reconcile our budget for that 120,000? Is that what you're saying?
I will have to take a look at it again because we've gone through some pretty severe cuts tonight. I don't know where that's going to throw us out, and yet we're going to have to look at probably another modification of some sort. I just don't know where at this point.
I don't think you can cut 120K out of a budget without cutting a body or two, and
that's dangerous, Dan.
I know that. It's just you're not going to cut postage stamps and get to a big number like that. So we'll have to have difficult conversations, and whether we do it or not,
it will be difficult.
Yeah. Hey guys, before we go, can I just say one thing? In expressing concern for your own health, I count 5 people in that building, and I know you're not all sitting next to each other, but the whole point of this is so that we're socially distant, and you really can call in from home. Take a laptop home with you so you don't have to do this. I just really want to see you guys healthy, and
well, thank you for your concern, and I am very excellent at taking care of my own health. And we are each in a separate room. We have had no contact with one another, taking turns going out the door and so forth. Have not been in each other's presence. I have all my gloves and my masks and my Purell, and I feel very confident. I've been very aggressive at looking after my health. So thank you for your concern.
Okay, and do we want to adjourn?
I have one quick question.
Yep. Go ahead.
We had the legal bills that we were looking at in the beginning of the meeting. Did
the 4?
you want to look at them on Tuesday, or did you want to make a motion of some sort to pay any of them?
If they've been authorized, I'd say let's go ahead and pay them.
Yeah, I agree. Let's vote on them.
Guys, one of them is quite long, and I reviewed it, and it's not a flat fee. So I would suggest we do that one on Tuesday. It's a big one from Turner.
Okay.
So it's in your email. It's in your.
All right. We'll look at it. We'll do it on Tuesday.
Ready for your approval. Yeah.
All right. We'll refer them on Tuesday. But I just want to be clear that if you're referring to Jeff Turner's one for $20,000, that is a municipal bill. That is a quarterly bill that we have. So there is no flat fee involved with him on that one. But I will defer. I will bring that up, and we could do that as a first order of business on Tuesday, and we'll get that taken care of.
Good.
Okay? I'll make the other modification.
Frank wants to say something. Go ahead.
I'd like to say something, Trustee Galusha. Before we get into cutting people, we should understand that these opinions are opinions on what's going to happen to the sales tax number in August and November. They are opinions. If you would have asked me 2 months ago that we'd be going through what we're doing now, I would have said you're nuts. If you would have asked me a month ago that the government was going to send checks for $1,200 or $2,400 to a family, I'd say you're crazy. And I'm going to say the same thing now. If you tell me that the government is going to come to the aid of municipalities before they suffer sales tax cuts, I don't know if that's going to happen, but it would be very welcome. So I would say we should do nothing about cutting people, which is real versus unreal opinions. That's enough.
Thank you. Anyone else before we adjourn? If not, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Hold on. We have a couple chats that just floated in. I mean, if you want me to go ahead and throw it out there.
Okay.
It's from Dave Marshall, just real quick. He said float a bond, sewer or some other loan available to small villages may be a muni issue. I'll just throw that out there. I'm not familiar with those. That would have to be researched.
Yep. Okay.
Okay,
All right. That it?
that's it.
That's it.
Okay. All right.
All
We
right.
have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, I'll do roll
Okay.
call. Trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
Mayor Corby,
Corby, yes?
Trustee Lampier,
Lampier, aye.
Trustee Galusha,
Trustee Galusha, aye.
Trustee Stetser.
Stetser, aye.
Hey,
Thank
Dorothy,
you very much.
don't forget to stop the recording.
I'm going there next. Thank you.
Okay, good. See
Appreciate
you
it.
guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.